Hey, I'm Jonathan, and I live in London, England.
Hey, I'm Jeff, and I live in Perth, Australia.
Together, we are Ekko and Sidetrack.
We produce music that sounds like this.
And this.
And even this. This podcast is about music, creativity, and everything in between the giant space that separates us.
Welcome to A Band Apart with Ekko and Sidetrack.
Welcome to episode 9 of A Band Apart with Ekko and Sidetrack. Thanks for tuning in the last few weeks. Thanks for the messages about last week's demo. Lots of people really liked it, and
yeah, that's good.
It was
it's
a good
song.
one.
We should bring it back.
This week we don't have a demo, but we do have our first guest.
Ooh.
Yeah. I suppose a little bit of context is that 2 weeks ago, Jonathan and I sat down to record a podcast, a conversation about the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis by police, and try and understand a little bit more of the wider picture of racism and things like that. But it kind of came off, upon listening back ourselves, it came off like two angry middle-class white guys talking about something they didn't know much about, and were, peripherally aware of, and it just kind of came across a bit like miseducated. Jonathan, what would you say?
I don't think it particularly had the right tone.
It was a bit waffly as well. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was waffly. It was just like us being disgusted at what happened and being like, that's wrong. Racism is wrong. This is gross, but they're not really having much experience with racism or a wealth of knowledge about it. So it just didn't feel right. So we decided not to put it up. But we wanted to ask one of our friends who is mixed race, who is our friend Jake, to come on the podcast. Hello, Jake.
Hi, guys.
Because he has experience with racism and he can help educate us and just talk about it from more of a first person point of view.
Also, like, it's a conversation that we can be part of rather than just have between ourselves.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to precursor this by saying that where everything I say, I'm just trying to like understand what's going on, or and I might offer some comment about something based on what I've read, or again, none of us are experts, not even Jake is an expert, but we're all just trying to like understand this thing, and so we hope we don't offend anyone. That's definitely not our intention. This is more just a
I think it's just a very confusing, complicated time for a lot of people right now, and like it's important that we have conversations like these, even if everything you say not everyone's going to ever agree with. But if you don't start having these conversations, then just nothing, there's going to be no progress.
There's an element for white people to maybe definitely resistant to talking about it, because they don't know, they're maybe a bit afraid to fumble through and say the wrong thing, or there is not enough education or understanding.
Yeah.
So they don't want to have those conversations, but I think it is so important to start having those conversations so you can. I saw Neil Brennan, who's Dave Chappelle's best friend. He's been doing these like 2 camera bits on his Instagram, and he said said a really good thing. He's like, I have like had mostly black friends for my whole life, and I have never met people that are so understanding. Like, I'm white and I've said stupid things. I've said the N-word in front of my black friends. I've said racist things. I've said dumb things, like, and I've gotten through it.
Yeah.
And I've learnt how to communicate and kind of be more aware.
I have had these conversations with a lot of people, and it like I'm not angry that they have these views that I disagree with. It's just like, especially in this country, the UK, like I live in London, which is very multicultural, but you travel around a lot. It's a very predominantly white country.
Yep.
A lot of people have just never had their eyes open to these issues. So how could they know about it? And like most people are good people. Once you explain these things to them, like that, you will see some change in their attitude. They just need to be told.
Yeah, it's that classic thing. Like, if you don't know, then you like literally have no framework for context. So like, you know, you listen to this kind of music and you're like, I just like that kind of music. And then when someone tells you the culture behind it, or, you know, understand it, you're like, oh, that's why they say that. That's what that means. That's what all these things are about. I just like the music. I mean, that's a pretty... I remember hearing on a guy on a podcast talking about like just liking rap music when he was younger and not really understanding any of the stuff they were talking about, just liking the beats and things like that. And then he played it for his mum or something, and his mum grabbed the CD and just threw it out of the car. And he's like, that's when I understood that like I was listening to something that was potentially like, I think he used the word like dangerous or something like that. It's like, not dangerous to me, but my mum was like, this is crazy what you're listening to. This is quite... And so like he, as a, you know, young white kid from the Midwest or something, wanted to do some more research into what he was actually listening to. But let's maybe give a little bit of context, and maybe Jake, you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then
Sure.
you can tell us about your experiences.
Sure. Well, to give some background about myself, my name is Jake. I'm 24. I work for worship artists and Skank and Bass. Fumbled worship a bit there, which is a bit embarrassing. But don't tell my boss. To give you some context about me, I am mixed race. My mum is Jamaican and my dad is Jewish. So my ancestors on one side came to the UK to escape persecution from Europe, and then my ancestors on the other side were all slaves. So you could say persecution is like something I've been very aware of my whole life. It's not, I feel like a lot of people right now are just learning about it for the first time, which is, it's good that they're learning about it, but it is very sad it's taken this long.
Yeah.
I've always lived in London, which is, as I said, is very multicultural, it's very modern. And I've never really experienced dangerous racism. Like, I've never felt like my life was in danger. It's a situation, which is not something I take for granted at all. I have had to put up with a huge amount of casual racism just throughout my life. Like in London, traveling around the UK or Europe, I travel around a lot for work, for shows. Just give you some examples of these. Like I've had issues with police. I've been stopped by police. I've been threatened by police. I've been like in shops with white friends and I've been accused of stealing. I've been pulled out of queues to be searched in airports, clubs, places I've worked. I constantly get asked if I'm selling drugs, especially at festivals and clubs. Like I let it roll. I went a couple of years ago and I was probably asked about 30 times in one night, which is not an exaggeration at all.
Whoa.
Even when I'm like backstage clearly working, I still get asked if I have pills or I'm selling.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of stuff you get used to dealing with.
Yeah, I suppose, do you just like kind of take that in your stride and you go, oh, that's because they think that's because I'm black, or do you think
Small stuff you can just shrug off. Unfortunately we are kind of used to it. It's more egregious stuff where I do get angry. Like I've been accused of stealing a couple of times. I got accused of stealing in the Sainsbury's on top of my road. I was with a big group of friends. I think there were like 6 of us. I was the only non-white person. And the security guard's like, hey, what have you got in your pockets? And I was like, clearly there's a reason you're asking me this. You've picked me out of the group. Like, it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
And this is just, it's like any person of color has a million stories like that in Western society. But even then, I have to recognize that I'm very light skinned. I'm relatively light skinned, and because of that, I have some level of privilege. And what I've experienced is nothing compared to what people of darker complexion experience.
Yeah.
For them, it's a lot harder, and there's a lot more hurdles they have to jump over. And I am also a very unusual mix. Obviously, you don't get many Jamaican Jews running around, unfortunately. So
No.
because of that, I'm very racially ambiguous. Like when I do a job interview or I meet someone for the first time and they read my name, Jake Kleineman, they probably don't expect a 6'5" brown guy to show up. On a certain level, there's probably a lot of prejudice I've avoided through that. There's also issues that come with that. Like it's a mixed bag, I'd say. I've also, because of my appearance, people always ask where I'm from. I like to say, if you could throw a dart at a map and wherever it lands, people probably ask me if I'm from there. Like I get Arabic a lot. People think I'm Spanish or like Brazilian or like Indonesian. I've had Polynesian. Literally so many places. And because of that, I've also experienced prejudice towards other groups. I've definitely got a lot more abuse towards Arabic people aimed at me than ever towards black people or Jewish people, which is crazy because it's obviously it's totally unacceptable. But it's just like how do I when someone calls me a dirty Arab, how do I react? Like I'm offended, but I'm more offended for other people. They clearly have to deal with this.
Is that and do you think that's because of the UK's feelings towards Indian people and people from the Middle East and things like that?
There is definitely a big issue of Islamophobia in the UK right now, and obviously in America and a lot of the West, which is like with all the Black Lives Matter movement which is going on at the moment, we need to remember that there are other forms of racism which are very prevalent. Like Islamophobia is a huge one. I see a lot of anti-Semitism online all the time. These issues exist and they need to be addressed, but Black Lives Matter, the whole this movement is what we're focusing on right now, and that's like the most pressing one.
Yeah.
I also feel like if Black Lives Matter has really had a massive groundswell since Ferguson, I think.
Yeah.
And if that's the thing that breaks the dam, then that's really important, and I think more things will follow. Like if that's how some people are learning about racism and learning how to talk about racism and deal with racism, then that's great. That's like the gateway drug, if you will, to all these experiences. Because once they start to become more compassionate in that way, they'll start. It's like it's almost impossible to be as racist as you once were to other things. Like you have to start considering other people in everything you do.
The racism towards black people is the most ingrained in Western culture.
Yeah.
I feel like Islamophobia has definitely become...
For sure.
Like, it's definitely a lot uglier now than it was, like, 20 years ago.
One thing I was thinking of as well is, like, you hear people say, like, this is an American problem. Don't get involved in an American problem. But it's not. That's the movement that can be the poster child, if you will, for any kind of race, any kind of race-related movement worldwide. You know, Black Lives Matter can be about understanding Aboriginal cultures in Australia.
100%.
African culture in the UK, all sorts of things. So it's I suppose that's what I'm saying. It's like you can get behind it. You're going to get behind other things that are involved.
And going further, like there's huge issues with women's rights which need to be solved. There's massive issues with gay rights and trans rights which
Yeah.
need to be addressed, but the most brutal example right now is towards black people. Like, clearly,
Yeah.
it's you can't hide from that once you've seen the video and know everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And it is extremely uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it needs to happen.
I think something that's, even just talking to you then, like, Jeff and I have never ever been asked if we're stealing something in a store.
Yeah.
I have, but I was probably stealing something. Like honestly, like.
But like,
You know.
but never had any of that. Like, being white has never been a talking point.
Yeah.
Or an issue. Like, which is, I mean, it's something that that's what white privilege is, I guess. It's not being aware that the color of your skin is going to change how people interact with you.
Yeah. I saw recently on a conversation Matthew Modine was having with Talib Kweli, and he was saying,
I saw that as well.
yeah, it's really good. Just a very quick snippet of Matthew Modine saying, like, I learnt what white privilege was when he was married to a black lady, and they were going out of town, and they said to their friend who was black, you can house sit our house and you can drive our car and all sorts of things. Like, you take it, what's ours is yours. And he was like, I'm not going to drive your car. Like, I will, if I get pulled over, they'll think I've stolen it and everything like that. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. Well, I can write you a note or something. And then that's when he started going like, oh, people of color experience the world very differently to how I do. Like, there are literally things that I don't even think about that people of color have to think about all the time, and subconsciously have to think about all the time. And so, like, the way I framed it to my parents the other day, who are most definitely not racist, but we watched the documentary 13th on Netflix,
really, really good,
which is really good, all about the 13th Amendment. And my mum was like, it's an incredible thing to learn about, and I can only imagine what the feeling of being so concerned and like constantly aware of this thing. Like, they were talking about how they don't trust the police and things like that. And I was like, okay, like, imagine, this small uncertainty that we've had relating to COVID-19, this like, thing in this base level of like uncertainty and like, oh, the things are really strange. I'm really nervous. I'm worried. Imagine that feeling turned up and permanent. Yeah. And you might have an inkling of some of the feeling of being constantly persecuted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I think the fact that it would even be added to the fact that the people that I call when I'm in trouble and I can't deal with the situation is the police. And then suddenly, not only have you got to fear the police mistreating you, but you've almost got no one else, like no authoritative person that can come and help in a situation. Like, that has got to be such an isolating and being like, we're alone in this.
Yeah, well, the police are very, like, obviously we have to acknowledge there are good policemen out there.
Definitely.
But for me growing up in London, I'm told police, you can't trust them. Like, definitely don't trust them. It would have to be something very serious for me to call them.
Yeah.
And I just hate them, to be honest. Like, I see a police car pass by me and I want to spit in the street. Like, it's that level of just so many negative emotions boiled into one. You just have this very visceral reaction when you see them. Mm-hmm. And because it's like, they're a terrifying concept. Like imagine a institution which is inherently racist, built on racist like beliefs, and those people have the power to treat us however they like and feel completely entitled to do so. Like I've been in situations myself where I've seen policemen like abuse their power to do something that isn't right and take glee in it. And it's feeling of powerless while you see a policeman misuse that feeling of powerlessness when you see a policeman misusing their power is like the worst thing in the world. I can't even really describe it, how painful that feels. And then in America they have guns. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean that's the next level, isn't it? Because in the UK they've only got the batons, don't they? They don't actually carry firearms.
No. And we've seen time and time again how willing they are to use those guns. This goes quite well into the George Floyd situation, which I did want to talk to you guys about.
Yeah.
Like, have you two watched the full video?
I've not watched the full video. I've seen very parts of it, and I'm quite, I'm not sure if ashamed is the right word, but like it did make me extremely uncomfortable. And I mean I don't like watching videos of many, anything really bad. I don't like the way it makes me feel.
Yeah.
But I thought I would, and this kind of thing just, I knew what kind of thing it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like, because I'd seen what was the name of the guy who...
Eric Gardner, the guy in New York.
Yeah, New York.
Yeah.
I'd seen that video on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is happen again? Like, how can this thing happen again? So no, I haven't seen the whole video.
Have you seen it?
I watched probably about half of it.
Yeah.
And then had to turn it off because I felt an overwhelming sense of like sadness. Even thinking about it now, it makes me feel like really sad and like and I can't imagine what it must be like for like people of color to watch that kind of thing and know that that's like a reality in their lives, that could actually happen to them. But to see someone so helpless and to see the perpetrators not
so nonchalant
about it and just not caring, it's a real stark contrast of fucking human emotion, and it's kind of sickening to think that you could not give a fuck that much,
Yeah.
After I watched half of that, I did see a couple of other clips of basically just like people had put together like a montage of police shootings.
Yeah,
and the ones where like people are being pulled over, reaching for their license, documentation, and just getting shot, and beatings, and the Rodney King beating in LA in the 90s. Like all of them are just so.
The feeling I get is like, how can no one see that this is wrong? How can the perpetrator not see that this is the incorrect thing? Like, as the observer through the camera, you want to reach through and be like, all right, this needs to stop. Like, how can I break this up?
Yeah.
And then like, no, it's got so much momentum. It just keeps going.
Yeah. I was going to say, I didn't watch the full thing until this weekend because I just didn't, like, when I first heard about it and saw it, I just wasn't surprised. I was like, oh, it's happened again.
Yeah. That's the worst thing.
And I'd seen like little clips of it, but I never sat down and watched the whole thing until this weekend. And I was like, if we're going to do this, I think it'd be a failing to not properly watch it.
Yeah.
And it's even though this has happened so many times, I think this is the most egregious case ever caught on video. Like the sheer like brutality of it and the horror of it and how humiliating and like it is. It's just, that's why it's become it's had the reaction it's had, because it is just so awful, really.
The craziest thing is that this is like the fact that you could just go, oh, it's happened again. Like this is another black person has been killed by police in America.
The fact that it's not a surprising thing is...
Yeah, and how did this one happen? Like that's so crazy that that's even like something that can be even considered in that way. And like, you know, it gets even more powerful, like Johnny said, when they go like, this is the X number this year, and this is what happened to this person, and this is what, like, you know, say their names kind of thing. This happens countless times and times again. And even during this, you know, this more recent groundswell surrounding George Floyd, there's been more killings. Yeah. Which is insane. Like,
yeah, there's just, yeah. I mean, to go back to the video, like as I was watching it, that even though it's been talked about so much, like you notice things which no one seems to be talking about. Like you can, as he's doing it, the policeman who's talking to the people filming is like, "This is why you don't do drugs, kids." It's just just like this is what he deserves.
Yeah.
Like this is what we'll do to you if you don't comply to us.
what the fuck?
You can see where he pissed himself on the floor next to him, which is just like horrendous. Like
it's a real,
like I sent you guys the Dave Chappelle video where he talks about it a lot.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it is
that
just
was,
like
I
how
think it was really great.
yeah, how can you not understand why we're so angry?
Yeah.
And when we see this happen to him, an innocent man, like we see ourselves, we see our brothers, we see our fathers or uncles or whoever, like it hits home. Like my uncle lives in Atlanta. Like that, I could see that happening to him, and they just wouldn't care.
And I think that's, again, I can't see that happening to anyone in my family.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening to the only people I can see that possibly happening to are my black friends.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't have that same response, which shows that it's like clearly an issue of race that's going on. You know?
The main thing I've thought every time I've seen it is I just think like, if I was there, what could I have done? And I kind of have like this fantasy where like I like push the police off him, like save his life. And I'm like, why did no one do this?
Yeah.
But it comes back to what I said before. You can't do that. That's not an option. The minute you put your hands on the police officer in that situation, the same thing's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And it's that powerlessness of, it doesn't matter if you're watching it, if you're in front of it, watching it on a screen, you just can't do anything to stop it.
I think the concept with army and what's it called, like police negotiators and things, is like they want to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah.
And one of the main problems that they're saying is that like seems that police are very reactionary.
Yeah.
And they are, you know, I don't think every person that's ever shot at anyone is a bad person, but I think they're too reactionary. And like we said, they are carrying firearms. They're trained in these things to varying degrees.
Yeah.
And so they do go to that gun to try and immobilize. Some of the best cases have been times when they've been able to de-escalate a situation. And it goes for like the police trying to talk to the person they're arresting or being involved with, but also police need to be able to de-escalate themselves.
Yeah.
Like there has to be someone that goes, hey, how did none of the police be like, hey, this is fucked up, this is not good, like let's step away, let's work this, he's in cuffs already, let's sort this out in another way. Like that's crazy to me.
There's a few parts to that. There's one part which is as soon as a policeman like steps in and says like this is wrong, they're showing liability in that moment.
Yeah.
And if they do that when there has a review or something, then the cop who is doing it can get off a lot worse. I believe that's part of it.
There's also sorry to go off. There's also an aspect of they don't want to be the one to say something.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you're that one, you're now known as like like you're a rat of the police force, or you're a sympathizer. You're not on our side. It's us versus them.
Then there definitely is bullying inside it.
Yeah.
I think a huge part of it is the creation, especially in America, there's been a creation of the image of the black male as this dangerous criminal.
Yeah.
Like you saw you mentioned the 13th, Jeff.
Yeah, man.
That's something that I knew existed, but even I didn't know it was I didn't know it was that level. The idea of the
super predator.
Yeah, this African male super predator who's a danger to white women. Like that's To Kill a Mockingbird. That's what happened to Emmett Till. It's this belief that the black man is a danger to the white woman, when historically, like there's like the slave owners raped African women a huge amount, and that will never be documented. But that happened on every plantation.
Yeah,
but no one talks about that, and it's been such a huge issue in America, especially. Like they gave the example of the Bush v. Dukakis election.
Yes.
I've forgotten the guy's name, but he was a black man who was accused of raping a white woman and killing her boyfriend. And that one case was used as basically a way to swing the election. And Bush Senior was elected because of it.
They spoke about the first time the article appeared, his race was never commented on, and he was called like William Burroughs, or he had a name, like they said his full name.
Yeah.
In the ad, they called him Billy Burroughs or something. They had a picture. They had his mug shot there.
Yeah.
Where he looked quite, intimidating and things like that. He was clearly a black man.
Yeah.
And basically, they were saying without saying it, and they have been saying this in politics since forever, really.
Yeah.
In America, is that like, black people are less than you, and they will try and take things from you. They will try and hurt you, and we need to stop them rising up, essentially.
Yeah.
Because like that guy says, who's Nixon's advisor, talks about like, in the 50s you used to be able to be racist, just outwardly racist to get the racist vote. But now we have to start talking about economic things and things like that. But what we're really saying is the same racist rhetoric we've always been saying.
Yeah.
We're just doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
But it was all, and like, just seeing how this thing is baked into the system, and like Bill Clinton spits out the crime to get the votes. The Democratic person is becoming more Republican to get the vote. And so they crack down on this stuff. It was all to get voted in.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's allowing the CIA to run cocaine into Arkansas and, all sorts of other skullduggery that's going on. Yet he's just trying to, it's crazy. The politics behind it.
When you combine that kind of inherent fear of the African American within the white community, combine that with a institution of the police who feel entitled to do whatever they like, and everyone's got guns, Like it shouldn't be surprising that so many innocent men are murdered by the police. I saw a really good statement from Greg Popovich, who's the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, which is a basketball team.
Yep.
He said the best teaching moment of the whole George Floyd issue is the look on the police officer's face. He was just so nonchalant and casual in how he's literally ending a man's life. That in his mind, it was his right and his duty to do so. He said he was embarrassed that he can see, like, he didn't know that could happen. And he said that you see, like, you've seen books, you see Django Unchained, and you see black men hanging from trees who've been lynched, and you never think that would happen in today's society. You think we're past that, but then you see something like this, and you're like, it can clearly still happen.
It's the same energy.
Yeah.
That drives it. It's the I have the power to do so, therefore I will.
Yeah.
What I don't get is why at no point did he, because what is it? He sat on his neck, kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes and 42 seconds, or 8 minutes and 24 seconds.
46 seconds, I believe.
Like, surely at some point during that time, in his mind, isn't there some sort of like, maybe I'm doing this a bit hard, or like maybe I can just lift my knee up slightly, or like maybe I'm, he's on the ground, there's three of us here, maybe I could just pull back. Like, why doesn't that occur in someone's mind?
He's running off that momentum of thinking he's doing the right thing. That's like this crazy energy. We've all done something and been doing something and been like, if we're incredibly angry or something and you might go too far, you say the wrong thing, you go 2 steps far and you're like, oh man. But can you imagine being this person is in this position and just like believing he's doing the right thing? He's just so in it. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying, like,
But I think the guy was clearly unstable. Like, I saw he had, I think, 18 complaints against him.
Yeah, it seems like he's definitely someone who has racial issues.
But in what career can you have 18 complaints and still have your job?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck
Like,
that.
if, like, it's I feel like it's usually one complaint, like, you're on a warning. Like, by, I think, third complaint, you fired. That's any career.
It's police and Catholic priests, I think, can have multiple complaints against them and they just get moved around.
Yeah. There's it says something about that police department in particular that he could still be working.
Yeah.
And that
definitely.
none of the three people with him would do anything. But even then, there's the video. You can see the video of them beating him up. The 4 police officers beating up George Floyd in the car.
Yeah.
Before that happened. There's so many parts to it.
I've been blown away by seeing all the videos of the police being involved in beating protesters in light of this. Like, so since George Floyd was murdered, there's been obviously a lot of protests.
Yeah.
And some of them have gone into violence. And the look on some of these cops' faces as they hit people or spray them or something is like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. Like, it's like they're playing this game. They get to bash this person. Like, this person's yelling at them, and they're giving them, a level 5 aggression, and the cop just goes, I'm going to go 0 to 10 right here, and I'm going to take fucking pride in doing this.
I'd say for all the slander I've said about police today, like, being a policeman is a tough fucking job.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy. There's a lot they have to go through, and they've formed like this kind of insular bond community where they feel the need to defend each other, which goes above morals. And it's very similar with the army or the navy. And like, if a policeman heard the things I was saying today, they would be, I imagine they'd be extremely angry. But it's to the point where, as you said, they feel like they're being attacked and they're hitting back.
Yeah.
And they're like, a lot of most policemen, even if they are, don't think that they're racist. And they're like, regardless if they think what he did was justified or not, they're just protecting their brothers and sisters in their mind.
Yeah.
And hitting the protesters is a part of that.
It gets very dangerous into that territory when they're like, oh no, I'm just doing my job. I'm just like, defending the people. I'm protecting what am I protecting here? What the fuck is going on? Like,
Yeah.
It's so murky, like because I think it was the police chief in Houston, which is where George Floyd's funeral was, who basically said, like, he's Hispanic and he was like, Houston's a very multicultural town. It's one of the most diverse major cities in America. And he's like, we stand with you. We are with you on this. Like, we don't want violence. We're not going to engage with this kind of thing. We want to march with you in this. We believe what you believe. We're on your side. And I think that's that, like, compassion thing that, like, how can you not realize that this is a major thing?
Yeah.
To, like, get behind and be like, you've got to be human before you're a police officer.
True.
You've got to be human before you're anything, I think.
I've seen that video which you're talking about, and it is very powerful. But then on the other side, I've seen people say, like, we live in a world of PR. How do we know police just aren't? There are certain police doing those kind of things to settle people down. And
for sure.
You just can't know, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
I believe that particular policeman. I believe him, that guy. But there's other circumstances like that where you just don't really know. Are they being sincere?
They're a group, like any group. I'm just thinking out loud, so bear with me for a sec. It's like the police are a group, and we entrust them with our, to look after us, to protect us, to, and that we look at that group and we say all policemen will protect us to this level, but really policemen are humans too, and one singular policeman can act terribly, and then that means we can lose respect for the whole group, because they do have such an important job to act as one positive force. And I think that's really scary when you see that, like, it's not like it's just one person or 5 people. It looks like it is the group that is racist, that is
it's
broken.
It's happened so many times.
Yeah, which means the system is completely fucked.
It goes on and on and on. And
it's worldwide as well.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of people say this is the American problem, which is completely not true. Like, it happens in the UK as well. I wanted to bring up the story of Christopher Alder. I don't know if that's a name you guys have heard about.
No.
He was a British Army former paratrooper who died in police custody in Hull in 1998. He was basically involved in a fight. He was taken to hospital, and from hospital he was then arrested and taken to the police station. There's a CCTV video. There's a CCTV video which exists of him on the floor in the police station, choking on his own vomit and dying, while 5 policemen stand above him, laughing and making monkey chants.
What the fuck?
Like, it's like, that footage exists. I dare say, if social media existed in 1998 and you could have shown that to the public and made it as widespread as the George Floyd video, maybe it would have had a similar reaction. But I didn't know about it.
Film media has always been a part of protests, like, whether it's you can look back and see footage of the civil rights movements in the 60s. You can see pictures of slaves in some of the earliest photography in America, and it's almost like this is it has to keep being shown to us in our faces to make a change. Like it sounds like I'm saying the wrong thing, but I suppose what I'm saying is it's been documented before, and it's going to keep being documented. The instantaneousness of it now is very important. The fact it can be put straight online. But there's always been this level of removal that people have been able to have from it. It's like, oh, it's not in my country. It's not in my town. They're not my people. They're not, But I think the more it happens and the smaller the world gets with the internet, it really becomes quite obvious. It's like this is an every person problem.
Yeah, I think that has been an issue with a lot of people where they don't believe they're racist. They don't see racism, or like they might see it online, but they're not. It's not something that affects them actively, and so they just don't realize it's a problem to the level that it is.
Yeah, totally.
And there's just for situations like this, there's just been no justice. It's happened repeatedly.
Did the police officers that
they were charged for manslaughter, and they were all acquitted.
What the fuck?
And I don't understand how you can have a video that damning, and for them to be acquitted. Like there's clearly an issue. It can't keep happening over and over again.
Yeah,
but it has. That was 20 years ago.
Yeah, you'd think some things would have changed. Like, if you think about how much the world has changed in so many ways, to have these things, it was 20 years ago that happened, and then, 20 years ago you had Nixon and his war on drugs, which led into Reagan. And then 20 years before that was civil rights in America. And then, 80 years before that was slavery. It's so fucking recent. And it's so, and like, anyone that's like, oh, things should have changed. Yeah, they should have. As to think of all the developments we've had in the world, and we've still got this baked in belief system that's so fucking broken.
It's so archaic, the idea that like racism as a concept is such an archaic, dumb idea. Like it's like it's like a caveman idea. You know how people talk about like, people in the 1500s wouldn't have been that smart. There would have been a lot of violence. They would have
burnt witches and stuff like that.
Yeah, witches and stuff like that. That's the realm. Like racist thinking should belong in that realm. Racist thinking shouldn't belong in a time where we've got fucking electric cars and sending people to space. It's like it's holding on to this dumb, stupid concept. Yet it's still so rife.
What race would you say I am?
I would say you're mixed race. But even though...
Well, what race are you guys?
I would say we're European.
But there's only one race.
Oh, yeah, sorry. There is only one race.
Yeah.
The human race.
Yeah. The whole concept of race is insanely outdated.
Yeah.
Like, we have different backgrounds. Why are we different races?
I don't know.
Why does that exist? But it existed as a way to justify... It exists as a way to justify doing unspeakable crimes to other races. That's how, like, if you go back to the Crusades, the Christians could excuse invading the Muslims because they were a lower belief system. They didn't matter.
Same thing in South America and stuff. It's like, oh, we can roll over these guys. They don't have guns. They don't have
Africa
horses.
And Australia.
Man, Australia. I was reading something just before about basically in Australia we granted Aboriginals more equal rights in the mid 60s, and there was a big referendum in 1967 that kind of said that we're going to adjust our constitution to say that the government can make laws involving the Aboriginal people. Basically, it was including them. And I mean, that led to a bunch of other things that were terrible for Aboriginal people. But I read one thing that's from 1902, and there was a member of Parliament saying that we don't need to include Indigenous people in this chat, in this constitution. Yeah, we don't need to, because, quote, there is no scientific evidence that they are human beings at all. This is in 1902.
Insane.
That's
crazy.
the thing. That's the thing. It's like white people think that we're superior, and so we thought we could just go along, take all their shit, treat them badly, because, you know, like, oh, if we kill them all off, we won't have to worry about them. And we don't. Let's be honest, we don't even know if they're people at all. What the fuck kind of thinking is that? Like,
Yeah, it's fucked up, man. It is fucked up. Like, this would be a good time to move on to the next thing I'm going to talk about, because education is a huge issue, and I will get onto that. Obviously, this is sparking like there's a lot of conversations going on right now. We live in a very changing world. Like we see every single company and celebrity coming out making a announcement about equality and saying they're doing more about diversity, and we're pledging this much money to these charities and blah 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 blah. And there's a lot of companies and individuals in the spotlight who are being torn down. I think some of them are justified. Like, you see Mark Wahlberg. I don't know if you guys know the deal with him.
He had some hate crimes in the 80s, I think.
So in 1986, when he was 15, he chased 3 black children through a neighborhood, throwing rocks at them and yelling, "Kill the N-words." I won't say it. The next day, he harassed another group of black children at a beach, again racially abusing them and throwing rocks at them. In 1988, he attacked 2 Vietnamese men while high on PCP. He knocked one of them unconscious with a wooden stick. He used racist slurs, and he was charged with attempted murder. Like, obviously that was a long time ago, and he was young, but that's serious crimes.
Yeah.
That's serious racism.
if he was a black guy, he would be in jail for life.
Oh, mate, he'd be dead. Imagine if a black man threw rocks at white kids in Boston. He would be dead. He'd be full of holes.
Yeah, if not by the police, by other members of the community. You know, fuck. What the fuck, man?
Has anything happened to Mark Wahlberg?
Well, people are saying, like, cancel culture is obviously a thing.
Yeah.
And people are saying cancel him, like, ruin his career. And
Yeah.
I think, yes, that, like, we can't, someone who's committed those kind of crimes, we can't have in the spotlight to such a degree.
Yeah.
Even if he's atoned for it, if it's something that bad, you need to draw the line. But I think, on the other hand, you have someone like Robert Downey Jr., who did blackface in Tropic Thunder. And there's a lot of people saying cancel him. And have you guys seen Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, blackface is an issue, but no one's losing sleep at night over Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. Like, something like that is fake outrage, and it's something that doesn't matter, and it's a complete distraction from the real issues. I think there's a lot of that going on right now.
I think as well, like, cancel. I mean, not to sidetrack the conversation into the cancel culture thing, but like, there has to be. I believe there has to be a way back for any person. But and I don't believe that people should be able to say like, oh, I was young, I did that when, that's 20 years ago, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
But I think you can't, there's levels of thing, and we can't cancel everyone that does any bad thing, and we can't only cancel the people that do bad things over a certain level or something. It's such a big...
There's a scale and where the crime should fit the punishment.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think Robert Downey Jr. should be cancelled for Tropic Thunder, but that should be looked at. Whereas someone like Mark Wahlberg, yeah, he probably should be cancelled and should be should atone for those, for clear hate crimes.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about Chris Lilly, who's the Australian comedian that made We Can Be Heroes and Summer Heights High and those kind of shows where he plays lots of characters. And one of the characters he's played, I think it's Jonah in Summer Heights High, is a kid from Tonga. And then in one of the more recent shows, he plays an African-American rapper. And all those shows have been taken off Netflix.
Yeah.
And people are now talking about cancelling him. Which, again, is like, yeah, maybe that should be... That maybe that's something that needs to happen. This kind of casualness, this casualness in comedy when it comes to race. And people, I've seen a couple of white people come out on Facebook and say, well, if they're going to cancel Chris Lilly, they should have a look at cancelling Marlon and Damon Wayans for white chicks, which is a ridiculous comparison because whiteface is not the same as blackface, nor does it have the same historical prejudice about it.
Prejudice becomes racism because of the power balance in it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Like no one's bringing up white chicks being offensive. They're just using it as an argument because they're like, we think you shouldn't be offended. One of the biggest things I could preach is empathy. Like, you could watch that. You can watch Chris Lilly or you can watch Tropic Thunder. You might not be offended, but other people might be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think people need to be more open to, even if they'll never understand, but they just need to be like, okay, fair enough. That bothers you. That's just fair enough. Doesn't affect me to get rid of it.
I think saying to people like I hear you and I understand what you're saying, rather than hearing someone's opinion and going, yeah, but you're just being sensitive, or like, oh yeah, but you don't understand. It's people that are saying all lives matter to people that say Black Lives Matter. It's like, you're not listening to what these people are saying. Like, you're just shouting down at them.
It is a bit, online is just a bit of a shouting match right now.
Yeah.
And there's so many, everyone's got their different opinions. So many people are shouting out different stuff. But it is good because we can get these things out in the open and we can talk about them.
Thanks for listening, everyone. That concludes part 1 of a 2-part conversation we had with Jake. We ended up talking for about 2.5 hours, so that's why we've had to split it up into 2 separate podcasts. I just wanted to finish on a small clip. This podcast was recorded over Zoom, so obviously you can only have a 40-minute Zoom with 3 people. So every 40 minutes or 38 minutes, we had to stop and restart it. I was hosting the Zoom meetings, and this is just a little clip of a conversation Jake and I had when I had a bit of a realization about something I said earlier in the podcast. And I just think that it's a good way to finish it, as it doesn't really have a place in the rest of the conversation. So we'll see you next week.
How do you think it's going? Good?
Oh yeah, I think it's going well. It's funny. I feel like when you said, what race do you think I am? my answer was actually such a example of how, not that it was a racist answer, but it was like an answer of how automatic
Yeah.
that thinking is imprinted.
That divisiveness.
That divisiveness is all like in me, and
Yeah.
to make me go, oh no, you're 100% right. There's only one race.
Yeah.
My first thing was like, yes, Jake's mixed race and I'm European. Like,
Yeah.
no,
It's crazy.
yeah, and
And
that was.
And part of the problem is realizing how ingrained in us that is.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on your podcast app and keep up to date with all new episodes. They're going to be coming out once a week. We are Ekko and Sidetrack on Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter, we are Ekko Sidetrack. Go listen to our music on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, YouTube, or wherever your ears consume happiness. Lots of love, people.